Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. So I just kind of stumbled upon this thing. It's I'm assuming it's black metal. It's a small band though, so we're going to be looking into this. They're called what is this? Ancestral Shadows. The track we're going to be listening to is the title track from their debut EP, I believe, called Eldritch Illuminations. Let's dive into this and see what's going on. Well, the bass was very clearly produced. I can still pick it out, but it's a lot harder with the left guitar on top of it. I like the little run at the end of the bass phrase. Vocals are pushed way into the backgrounds. Kind of going for a mix of a lo-fi and hi-fi sounds. Not in the middle, like mid-fi, but literally mixing lo-fi elements with hi-fi elements. Really tight run across the toms there. Interesting choice. The bass is punching through a lot better here. We still have our wall of sounds from our guitars. The clean spoken word it's neat. I kind of wish it was more clear, maybe a little bit higher in the mix, but I can get behind the idea. It's interesting how the guitars with this melody at the front and then just white noise tremolo picking behind it. Listen to the ride. Yeah, those are clean. interesting control of the sound sphere in that transition. I'm really digging the amount of melodic ideas in here. It's all transported to my ears in a vehicle I find difficult to parse, but the intent is there, and I'm appreciating that. This is highly ambitious also. A lot of the ways they're utilizing layers. Clean vocals and black metal alone is already interesting. Production is the one element that's standing out to me, and when it comes to black metal, I never know if it's intentional or not. There's some timing stuff going on here that's a little off, but no, it is a bit disruptive. There just really wasn't any room for that lead guitar there. Production-wise, compositionally it was solid. Yeah, I love how the bass is dancing around the guitar line right here. some more of those timing problems cropping up though. I appreciate the drummer constantly changing something up, never really trying to fall too hard into a pattern. Is there a third guitar in there somewhere?
Would have had me crawling on all fours like a beast.
Interesting way to end that. Alright, let's get into the old analysis section. I'm going to start with the positive, and then we'll move into some of the negative. Actually, it's just two negatives, yeah. So some of the positives, right? This is fascinating because there's a lot of elements in here that, at least to me, are experimental for black metal. The underlying foundation of black metal is here. Ton of distortion, fuzz, noisiness, compression, just really grittying up and muddying up the guitar tone. We have a lot of quick notes, whether they're 8th notes, 16th notes, or even tremolo picking. We have several sections where we just have rigid attack patterns. We also have drumming that utilizes quick bass kicks, usually on the 16th notes, paired with fancy cymbal playing. We also have alternating bass and snare, very similar ideas that we see through a lot of black metal, but there's also some more rock-oriented, laid-back metal styles, drumming styles that allow the song to slow down and breathe at times rhythmically, even though the guitars are still consistently playing with their rigid style. The drums kind of shift back into something with a bit more space to it, which I thought was interesting. We also have black metal growls and screams in here. And so on the surface, especially right out the gate, I was like, yeah, this is pretty straightforward black metal, but we explored a lot of elements that built on that foundation in interesting ways. Interesting ways. We're just going to leave it at that because we'll explore that in a little bit. We had one section, though, that had spoken word. We had clean singing. We had what sounded like choir-based or group-based clean singing. We had clean singing harmonized with harsh vocals. The bass is very present in here, which is more of a hi-fi black metal thing. I felt the bass was most present when the left guitar was not around, but I could still hear the bass even when both guitars were kicking in. The bass had some really neat ideas, some really nice punctuating concepts to the end of phrases, a nice tone. Just really great to hear the bass in black metal. And the guitars. Frequently, our two guitars played the same thing. A lot of black metal does this. At other times, our two guitars play different things in counterpoint style, where rhythmically they're the same, but melodically, pitch-wise, they're not. Also, kind of very black metal. But we also had sections where both guitars just did their own thing. One decided to hold out notes, and the other decided to do rhythmic ideas with quarter notes and eighth notes, while the bass did its own idea, not just sitting on a pedal tone and waiting to play the end of the phrase lick. They had melodic lines as well. We had three-way counterpoint of sorts at times. There was also a moment when we had our two guitars, or it sounded like two guitars, or maybe just one guitar that was in both channels, just full on tremolo picking with that fuzz and compression and distortion. Couldn't pick out a note, but it was just this wall of white noise behind two other guitars who had less fuzz and distortion, and I could hear the notes they were playing, and they had something going. And then there was a fourth guitar, possibly center channel, soloing. This is not something that happens in black metal. Not to mention that while this was going on, there were some clean vocals going on behind our lead guitar, solo guitar. Um, this is just not something black metal does. We also have a lot of slower tempos in here. A lot of slower tempos. Very not black metal, especially since it comes from thrash. But it took the Blackened aesthetic and put it over something that might fit closer with doom metal, which was very cool. I think we've heard Blackened Doom before, but to me, this is just slow black metal. I don't know if there's a subgenre, a specific subgenre named for that yet, but they went into this area quite a few times, and I don't know what to make of it. I don't think black metal works slow. And we'll talk about this in the negatives. It's just an interesting combination between two ideas that tend to employ drastically opposite end of the spectrum ideas. Um, but it was interesting. Once again, it's just a new idea that I hadn't heard in black metal before. And the song is just filled with these. It's also a 12-minute epic that goes, I think, linearly through a bunch of ideas. And that's not to say that we haven't heard black metal epics on the channel before. That's not to say they don't exist. But to me, they tend to be a bit on the rarer side. There are bands that excel at the epic, but for the most part, a lot of black metal songs don't tend to go for something like this, at least in my limited experience with the subgenre. So to see this 20-minute, almost prog epic of black metal that explores so many different facets of music within a black metal framework, it's just really interesting to see something so experimental within a genre that I've kind of written off as one note. Black metal can do a lot of things, but it also usually does those things all like black metal, which kind of has one thing going for it, which is wall of sound, fast playing, really being a noisy style. And yeah, so it's just really interesting to see them take this foundation and really push it to its limits, I think. Um, the other positive thing I want to touch on real quick is just the riffage. And that goes for everybody except the vocals. We'll touch on that in a second. Technically, we don't call them drum riffs, drum patterns, but we're just going to say riffs just so this can be the riff section. But yeah, the drum patterns are slick. I love the variety going on in them. I had mentioned that the drummer basically has an idea for a section, but consistently adds variety to it. Every 4 bars or so, we'll do what we're doing with a twist, and we keep putting a twist on top of what we're doing. And it keeps sections feeling fresh, even though the basic drum pattern hasn't changed for a minute. It feels like we're constantly moving forward and changing ideas. It's just a really great way to go about drumming. As long as you're not trying to make something repetitive, because this feels very refreshing from moment to moment. The opposite of a repetitive idea. The guitar riffs are slick all throughout. There's some really neat ideas in here, some nice flourishes and accents and ornamentation. It's really interesting too how often we'll get like 3 to 4 guitars going off at one time. I enjoy that. The layers are nice to hear. Black metal to me tends to be generally a flat style of music. Usually the speed, the atmosphere, the style, all of them are, we set it at the beginning and that is what the song is for the duration of the track. So just a lot of the variety coming out of the guitars as well as the drums allows the song to feel a bit more dynamic than a lot of black metal does in my experience. And the same thing could be said for the bass. It just existing is already breaking black metal rules, but it has some neat ideas. There's some skill that goes into the bass work and the composition. It's not just a mindless ride the pedal tone kind of concept, and and it shows. It has some nice lines both on its own and in tandem with the other guitars. It's just everything is real solid on the riff writing here. Now, I said it doesn't count for the vocals, and that's because I didn't pick up on vocal riffs per se. The vocals are kind of pushed into the background, so it's difficult for me to hear what's going on at all. I can hear when the vocals are activated. That's about it. Rhythmically, it's difficult to hear enunciation, to hear syllabic emphasis, to hear a rhythmic pattern to the vocals. They're either just on or off to my ears. And when it comes to the clean vocals, I don't really hear much pitch wise, but a lot of that's just due to the compression, the distortion, pushing it into the EQ, making it quiet compared to everything else. There's just a lot of obfuscation going on production wise that makes it difficult for me to hear specific pitches. So the vocals might be doing some cool things, and there is variety in how the vocals are layered, but the nuances of the instrument I have difficulty hearing due to the production techniques, and I think that's a good time to transition over into the negatives. Production. I don't know if this is a negative, right? Because, like I said at the beginning, it's tough to tell about black metal because its production spectrum moves from everything from the clearest to the muddiest, from the most high fidelity production to the lowest fidelity production, and everything is intentional and has fans. So it's difficult for me to clump this into the negative aspect. However, I do have a couple of situations that I feel it negatively impacted what was happening and detracted from the experience, regardless of if it was your aim or not. No, I can't even say that. If your goal was for it to be difficult to listen to, then it didn't detract. It was exactly what you wanted. Anyways, let's get into it. First of all, the vocals. Like I mentioned, this is a complaint I have about a lot of black metal and even just kind of metal in general. Some subgenres just don't care about vocals. They get stuffed into the mix and no one can hear them. And that's just a part of metal culture. And I'm not okay with that. But it seems that many bands and fans are bands and fans. Seems that many bands and fans are, and it could be that that's the intention here. The point is to emulate other bands who have done something similar. Um, I wish I could hear the vocals just a bit more. They are providing a lot of really cool layers, textural layers, harmonic layers that are going on. They're telling a lingual story that I'm just not privy to because I can barely hear them. There's elements of the performance that I just can't hear that's being obscured by the production. I want a little bit more out of the vocals. They don't need to be pop style and ever present, stealing the spotlight from everything else, but just make them a little clearer and a little louder so I can hear them, especially when you get into the clean vocals and the spoken word. Spoken word is so cool. And I don't think I've heard spoken word in black metal, and I wish I could have made out what was going on there. Um, so yeah. Now, here's the other thing. Lo-fi production does something very well. It kind of fills space when you have so much destruction on your guitar tone. and you hit it, and it's just this loud, crunchy white noise with a little bit of the pitch that you hit in the middle of it. You take what would be this little sound and fill up so much space with it. Okay, so we have two guitars that do that, pushed out to the sides. They're filling up a ton of space. They could probably, with a little bit of tweaking, fill up the entire sound sphere just on their own. Now, at one point, we have two of those guitars, or maybe one pushed out to both channels, making this white noise in the background. Then you put two more guitars on top of that, not as destructive, but also fairly large, playing their own lines. Then you have a bass center channel doing its own thing. Then you have the vocals in the background, which are barely audible, but also filling space, and the drums. How much space do you think is left in the sound sphere to do anything else with? Not much. And that's why both of the times that the guitar solo comes in, the center channel solo guitar, when everything else is going on around it, it's really difficult to figure out what it's doing. Not just because there's no space for it in the production, but also because its timbre, its tone, its guitar tone is very similar to the other ones. So what happens is it just kind of bleeds into the whole song. Now, granted, this could be the intent of the track. It could be about this unification of concept. You could intentionally be going for a wall of sound idea there. But the fact that we have a distinct guitar, you rarely ever have a center channel guitar. So you're putting it in the spotlight as far as the x-axis placement. You're putting it in the spotlight because it has a melody, not a riff. You have a linear melody work in here. And it's not just 16th note picking or tremolo picking on a single note. You have moving pitches here. It's a flow. It's melodic movement. It has a lot of elements that says, I'm the new lead section, listen to what I'm saying, and then the production says, no, 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 I'm going to cover you up, no one's going to be able to hear what you say, and there's this clash there. And that's where I'm saying that the production kind of falters with your intentions. I'm assuming your intention is to make this guitar solo listenable, to further the story of the song, and to also be able to hear the vocal work that's going on in the background as well. If your point, of course, is to make a wall of sound, mission accomplished. I couldn't hear most of what was happening here. It was just pure sonic weight at this point. There's so many things going on, and the production makes everything loud and fuzzy and hazy. And when everything is loud and hazy, nothing can be seen or heard. And so that's why I say, like, the production is maybe a negative, maybe a positive. It really depends on what Ancestral Shadows is aiming for with that section. I would naturally want a little bit more clarity out of it, and I think that they could still retain the white noise, fuzzy black metal sound and still kind of carve out some space for that solo to better exist. But that might not be their goal. This happened a couple of times though. Vocals, there were two guitar solos, I think, and just consistently, once you guys, as if I'm talking straight to them, once Shadows started to add layers and experiment with vertical composition, things got too chaotic and there just wasn't enough space for it. And so the production isn't working well with the composition, at least from my perspective. The other negative is performance. And honestly, a lot of this is fine, but there's quite a few moments where there's timing issues. And in the slower sections, yeah, that's going to be a bit more difficult, and they do crop up more often in your slower tempos, but it's all over the place. There are sections in pretty much, well, there are moments in pretty much every section where somebody's timing is just dragging. Usually it is dragging, which is interesting. Even in the faster sections, which people tend to speed up and rush faster tempos, and they drag on slower tempos. No, somebody was dragging consistently through this entire album. Most of the time, it was sort of blink and you miss it, right? It's a couple of notes, and they realized they were dragging and picked it back up and got into it. But there were a few more heavily layered sections where it just never quite got back together, and the song fell apart, honestly. I don't know how y'all kept going with it. I'm going to assume everything was recorded instrument by instrument rather than all at once with a live recording like they used to do with tape. So, I mean, I'm sure that helps a little bit. But there was one it was probably about minute 9, 10. We were getting close to the end, and we began to have all these layers, and the production wasn't doing any benefit here. And there was just constant timing issues, and the whole song just kind of imploded for a moment. And once we got out of that section, y'all lined right back up. But yeah, I mean, again, though, here's the thing is that some bands intentionally play with time like this. And I can't know for certain whether this is a technical limitation where maybe a little bit more practice could help, or maybe this is technical proficiency and y'all are just really good at purposefully playing slightly out of time, which boggles my mind. Not because it sounds bad or anything, but because I can't do that. I have so much academic training of playing in time with my neighbor, the person sitting next to me, the person, the group of instruments in front of me and stuff like that. I've talked about this before. Anytime we get to some like avant-garde music where people are all in their own tempos and stuff, like I can't even imagine it. At work, I would have to work so hard against my own intuitions. But I mean, just right there, I don't know if this is intentional or not. If it is intentional, I suppose disregard my criticism. It's what you're aiming for. But if you don't want your music to sound sloppy and that's not your intentions, then the timing needs to get tightened up a little bit. But that's not really a compositional thing. That's just practice, getting better at playing your instrument. So not anything specific to this song, I would say, just a general tip, I suppose, which you're probably already aware of. Most people who play instruments know when they played wrong. We actually just got done. Oh no, we didn't talk about this. Well, we did, but it was like weeks ago. Anyways, um, where's I going? Oh yeah. Um, I don't have lyrics anywhere for this, so I'm just gonna wrap this up, I suppose. Those are my thoughts on Ancestral Shadows' Eldritch Illuminations. Let me know what y'all thought. Did you enjoy it? Anything that stood out to you that maybe I didn't touch on or didn't dive into deep enough? If you have any differing perspectives on some things, or you just think I'm completely wrong on some aspects, let me know down in the comment section. Above the comments is a description box, and in there is a link for Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, link to the Discord server, so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three. All right, that wraps it up for today. Tomorrow we got a live stream. Tomorrow we have an album review. Sunday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Public live stream. Everyone's invited. I'm going to be doing live reactions, live requests. We're going to be going for 2 hours, and about 20 to 30 minutes of that will be taken up by 3 songs that are already on the list. After that, I'll be randomly picking things that are tossed at me from the comment section. They're not going to be full reactions. It's going to be typical live stream stuff, usually just 10, 15, 20 minutes worth of odd comments I have about a track. No deep dives. If you've watched other live streams, you'll know what you're in for. And then Monday we're going to do International Women's Day. A whole week dedicated to music written by, performed by, etc. by women. which is pretty cool because a lot of the bands on here are just dudes. Lots of dudes on the channel. So it's good to celebrate women's contribution to music. All right, until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.